The email arrived at 10:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, and with 2 clicks, my mother-in-law erased my baby from our family's history. I was sitting at my design desk, sipping lukewarm tea, the spring sunshine of our Maple Creek neighborhood streaming through the window. It was a perfect, quiet, suburban morning. Liam, my husband, had just left for the architecture firm, and I was settling into work. Then, ping. The subject line was cheerful, almost aggressive in its forced festivity. It's here. The 2025 Miller Family Summer Solstice Party. My heart did a little flip. This was it. This was the party where we were going to tell everyone. My mother-in-law, Margaret, lived 3 streets over in a house that was perpetually guest-ready. Her annual summer solstice party wasn't just a barbecue, it was a neighborhood-defining event. It was the opening ceremony of summer, and her Evite was the official proclamation. I clicked it open. The design was predictable. Clipart Suns, a swirling floral border and Margaret's signature font, Magnolia script, which always felt like it was smiling at you condescendingly. I scrolled past the details: date, time, bring your famous pasta salad, Brenda, looking for the section she always included. There it was, the Miller family news reel. My breath caught. We had just told her, last night. We'd sat in her sterile living room, the one that still felt like a staged home from her realtor days, and I'd watched Liam's face, bright with joy. "Mom," he'd said, his voice thick with emotion. "We have news, we're pregnant." I had watched Margaret's face closely. Her smile, usually so wide and polished, had tightened at the corners. "Pregnant," she'd repeated, the word sounding foreign, almost distasteful. 13 weeks, I'd chimed in, trying to fill the sudden cold silence. "We had the scan. Everything is perfectly healthy. We're so happy." 13 weeks, she'd mused, looking not at me but at Liam. Well, that's fast. It hadn't been fast. It had been 2 years of trying, of charts, of quiet disappointments, and one devastatingly early miscarriage last year, a chemical pregnancy that was over before it began. A secret we had shared only with her, in a moment of vulnerability, seeking comfort. "We were thinking," Liam had continued, either ignoring or not noticing her chill, "we could announce it at the party. You know, during the toast." Margaret had finally smiled then, a slow, calculating smile. "What a wonderful idea, darling, leave it all to me, I'll make sure it's special." Now I scanned the news reel, my heart thumping. Cousin Tim graduated from Ohio State. Way to go, Timmy. Aunt Sue is recovering beautifully from her knee replacement. We're saving you a dance. Brenda's prized hydrangeas won the Maple Creek Garden Club Award. And yes, she's still bringing the pasta salad. Uncle Mark and his wife are off to Alaska for their 30th. I scrolled, and scrolled again, and again. Nothing. We weren't there. Our baby, our healthy 13-week-old miracle, wasn't listed. She had mentioned a knee replacement and a pasta salad, but not her first grandchild. My hands started to tremble. It had to be a mistake, a simple oversight. She was busy, she forgot. Yes, that was it. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over her name. I hated this feeling, this small, shrinking feeling I only ever got around Margaret. I dialed. It rang twice. "Ilara, darling, did you get the invitation? Isn't it lovely?" I found a new template. "Hi, Margaret," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Yes, it's beautiful. The floral border is really nice. I just had a quick question. I was looking at the newsreel." "Oh, yes. So much happening," she chirped. I think you might have forgotten something. Our news, the baby." There was a pause, not a confused pause, a weighted, deliberate one. "Oh, that," she finally said, her voice dropping into a tone of synthetic, syrupy concern. "Yes, I thought about that, Alara. I really did, and I decided it was better to wait." The blood drained from my face. "Wait, what? What do you mean?" "Well, dear," she sighed, as if explaining a complex mathematical equation to a child. "You know, after your condition last year, your scare, as you called it, are you really sure this one is, well, sticking?" I couldn't breathe. She was weaponizing my miscarriage, my grief. "We told you, Margaret," I whispered, my throat tightening. "We had the 12-week scan. Dr. Kaur said the baby is perfect, healthy, strong." "Oh, doctors say all sorts of things, honey," she said dismissively. "And 13 weeks is still so uncertain." I just couldn't bear to get the whole family's hopes up, only to have to send out another, sadder email later. You understand, it's just too much emotional whiplash for everyone. For everyone, or for her. I just think it's wiser, she continued, her voice regaining its cheerful clip, to keep this delicate news to ourselves for now. We can always announce it at Thanksgiving or even Christmas. That's a much better timeline. It gives you time to be sure. I was speechless. She wasn't protecting the family. She was protecting her party from the inconvenience of my potential failure. She was telling me my joy was provisional. My baby was a maybe. Margaret, listen, darling, I have to run. Brenda is on the other line, confirming her guest count. We'll see you on the 21st. Wear the blue dress, not the yellow one. The yellow washes you out. Bye-bye, the line clicked. I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dead air. The sun was still streaming in, the birds were still chirping, but the entire world had gone cold and gray. She hadn't just forgotten. She had deliberately, calmly, and cruelly erased us. I looked down at my own stomach, my hand moving to rest on the tiny, still invisible bump. She doesn't get to do this, I whispered to the quiet room. I won't let her. But the Evite was already out, sent to over 100 people. The first draft of our family's history for the summer was written, and we weren't in it. To understand Margate, you have to understand Maple Creek. Our suburb isn't just a place. It's a performance. We live on streets named after trees, in colonial-style houses with lawns that are a passive-aggressive competition of chemical treatments and obsessive edging. You don't just live in Maple Creek. You participate. You're on the committees, you're at the bake sales, and you never leave your trash cans out past 8 a.m. on collection day. And for the last 20 years, Margaret Miller had been the unofficial director of this performance. Her late husband, David, had been a beloved local councilman. He was a genuinely warm, booming, charismatic man who knew everyone's name. When he died of a heart attack 5 years ago, the entire town mourned. Margaret, in her grief, didn't shrink. She calcified. She stepped into the vacuum his personality had left and became the matriarch, the keeper of his legacy, the guardian of Maple Creek's standards. Her summer solstice party was the cornerstone of that legacy. I was not a Maple Creek native. I was a city girl, a graphic designer who met Liam at a downtown gallery opening. He was an architect, quiet, thoughtful, and with a smile that crinkled his eyes. He saw the world in lines and light, and I saw it in color and text. We just fit. He was the calm to my creative chaos. When he first brought me to Maple Creek to meet his mother, I was intimidated. Margaret's house was immaculate, all beige and cream, with not a single pillow out of place. Ilara, she'd said, sizing me up. What a unique name, and you're an artist. A graphic designer, I'd corrected gently. Mostly corporate branding and web design. Ah, she'd nodded. So you work from home, on the computer. How lovely for you to have so much free time. That was Margaret's specialty, the velvet-gloved insult. The criticism disguised as a compliment. For the first few years, I'd tried desperately to win her approval. I'd learned to bake her favorite lemon poppy seed cake. I'd joined the library fundraiser committee. I'd worn the right clothes to her parties, but nothing was ever quite right. My cake was a bit dense. My committee work was sweet but unfocused. My clothes were almost there. Liam saw it. He wasn't blind. She's just prickly Ilara, he'd say, pulling me close after a tense family dinner. She's been alone since Dad died. She sees you as competition, not completion. Don't let her get to you. It was easier said than done. But my love for Liam was bigger than my discomfort around his mother. We built our own life, in our own house, a fixer-upper that Margaret hated, calling it drafty. We had our own friends, our own routines. Our closest friend was Elena. She was my college roommate, now a lawyer who lived one town over, and she was the only person who saw Margaret with perfect, unclouded clarity. I called her after hanging up with Margaret, my voice still shaking. I'm sorry, she said. What? Elena's voice crackled with indignation. She's waiting to see if it's sticking. Ilara, that is the most vile, monstrous thing I have ever heard. That's not concern, that's a curse. I think she's just scared, I murmured, the words tasting like ash. It was the excuse I always made for her. She's scared for us, after the miscarriage. She's just trying to protect us. Protect you by publicly omitting your child, by telling you your joy is invalid. No, she's marking her territory. She's the matriarch, and she's reminding you that she controls the family narrative. You and Liam went off script by getting pregnant without her approval, and now she's editing you out of the story. You have to shut this down, hard. How? I whispered. She's already sent the email. I don't know, Elena admitted. But Liam needs to fix this. Not you, him. This is his mother, his circus, his monkeys. He needs to set the boundary, or she will spend the next 18 years treating your child like an optional accessory. Elena was right. This was Liam's battle. When Liam got home that night, he found me in the nursery. Or, what would be the nursery? It was just a spare room, still painted a dull beige, empty except for a single, small box. I was sitting on the floor, holding a tiny pair of white, knitted booties. He didn't say anything. He just saw the look on my face, the Evite still open on my laptop on the floor. He knelt, his architect's hands, usually so steady, visibly trembling as he took in the scene. She did it, didn't she? He said. It wasn't a question. I just nodded, tears finally spilling over. She said. She said she's worried it won't stick. She said she's protecting us from getting everyone's hopes up. She said we can announce it at Christmas, like it's a software update, not a baby. I watched his face. I saw the flash of the son who loved his mother, warring with the husband who loved his wife. He closed his eyes, his jaw tightening so hard a muscle jumped. She's weaponizing the miscarriage, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. The one thing we asked her to hold in confidence. She made us invisible, Liam. He stood up abruptly. No, he said, his voice flat and cold in a way I'd rarely heard. She didn't. She just thinks she did. What are you going to do? I'm going to talk to her, he said, grabbing his keys. I'm going to handle it. Don't worry, Alara, I promise you. I will handle this. He walked out the door, not slamming it but closing it with a finality that was almost more frightening. I waited for hours. I paced the living room. I tried to work. I tried to eat. Every scenario played out in my head. Margaret would cry. She would gaslight him. She would twist it, make him the bad guy for upsetting her. She would make me the villain, the oversensitive DIL who was driving a wedge between a mother and her only son. This was her superpower. She could absorb any criticism and reflect it back, warped, making the accuser into the abuser. When Liam finally came back, it was almost midnight. He looked exhausted, like he'd been in a battle. He walked in, dropped his keys in the bowl, and pulled me into a hug, burying his face in my hair. It's done, he murmured. I talked to her. And, I whispered, afraid of the answer. And she apologized. I pulled back. She apologized, Margaret, sincerely. She said she was just scared, Liam said, and my heart sank. He was echoing her excuse. She was terrified of us getting hurt again. She said she was coming from a place of love, she cried. She said she didn't realize how it would look. She promised she'd fix it. She's going to send an update. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe her, but the victory felt hollow. An update? I asked. Yes, he said, forcing a smile. She's sending it out first thing in the morning. A correction to everyone. See, it's fixed. It was just a terrible misunderstanding. He held me tight, but I felt a new, cold pit of fear. He had gone to fight a dragon and had come back convinced it was just a scared lizard. She had won. She had cried, and he had folded. And as I fell into a fitful sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret's fix was going to be infinitely worse than the original problem. The update email arrived at 7:30 a.m., before I'd even had my coffee. Liam was in the shower. I saw the notification on my phone and my stomach twisted into a knot. Subject: a wonderful update to the Miller summer party. My hand was shaking as I opened it. It was addressed to the same massive list. Dearest friends and family, it began, in that same breezy, insufferable Magnolia script. It seems in my excitement for the party, I missed one very special and very delicate piece of news. My wonderful son, Liam, and his wife, Alara, are trying so hard to start their family, and it seems they have some hopeful news. Trying. Hopeful news. I read on, my blood turning to ice. As many of you know, they had a very sad scare last year, so this time, we're all just crossing our fingers and praying for them. Please join me in sending all your positive, hopeful thoughts to Alara as she navigates this fragile time. We are all rooting for you too, and we're just praying this one is a sticky bean. She included a winking emoji and a prayer hands emoji. I felt the bile rise in my throat. This wasn't a celebration. This was a public prayer circle for a lost cause. She hadn't fixed anything. She had taken our private, healthy, joyful news and reframed it as a desperate, pathetic public struggle. She had broadcast our past trauma, the scare, to over 100 people. She painted me as a fragile, damaged vessel, incapable of carrying a child and our baby as a maybe, a hopeful attempt, a sticky bean. She had reduced my pregnancy to a piece of tacky, pity-inducing gossip. Liam came downstairs, toweling his hair, a smile on his face. "Morning, did she send it? Is it?" He saw my face. I didn't have to say a word. I just handed him the phone. I watched him read it. The color drained from his skin. The flicker of hope he'd been carrying died instantly. He read it again, and a third time. She promised, he whispered. She looked me in the eye and, she said, "Fragile time." "Sticky bean." "She told them about the miscarriage, Liam," I said, my voice hollow. "She told everyone." "No," he said, his voice hardening. "No, this is not what we agreed on." He grabbed his own phone, dialing her number. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Margaret. I'm out finding the perfect peonies for the party. Leave a message." "She's screening us," Liam said, his hand balling into a fist. And then my phone buzzed, a text. It was from Aunt Sue. "Alara, honey, just got Margaret's email. Oh, you poor thing, I'm just praying for you. Don't you worry your pretty little head. These things take time. We're all here for you." Ping, another text. This one from Brenda, the neighborhood queen bee. "Margaret told me you were trying. So brave of you to be so public about your infertility. You're in my thoughts. Let me know if you want the name of my cousin's acupuncturist." She swore by it. Ping, an email from a cousin I hadn't seen in 5 years. "Hang in there, Alara. Thinking of you." They were coming in, one after another. A flood of pity. A deluge of sympathetic head tilts, all orchestrated by my mother-in-law. She hadn't just erased our baby. She had replaced it with a narrative of my failure. I looked at Liam. The shock on his face had been replaced by something else. A cold, quiet rage that was almost terrifying. "She knew exactly what she was doing," I said, the tears starting to fall, hot and angry. "She waited until you left and she wrote this humiliation." "She wants to control it," Liam said, staring out the window. "She can't stand that this is our news, our family. She has to be the center of it. The benevolent, worried matriarch holding her fragile little family together. She's made us a charity case." "What are we going to do?" I cried. "We can't go to that party. I can't face those people. I can't stand there and have Brenda pat my arm and tell me about acupuncture." Liam was quiet for a long time. The only sound was the ping of another pity text arriving on my phone. "Yes, we are," he finally said, turning to look at me. "What?" "We are going to that party," he said, his voice firm. We're going to hold our heads high. And we are going to make our announcement." "Liam, she already made the announcement. She turned it into a prayer request." "No," he said, walking over and taking my hands. His were cold. "She sent out her version. A version built on lies and manipulation and a breach of our deepest trust. At the party, we're going to tell the truth." "How?" "By grabbing a microphone. She'll just cut us off. She'll say we're emotional and ungrateful for her support." "Just trust me, Alara," he said, his eyes meeting mine. They were dark and serious. I know, I fell for it last night. I wanted to believe she was still the mother I grew up with. But that person is gone, or maybe she was never there. But I am not going to let her do this to you, or to our baby." He picked up the little white booties I'd left on the counter and held them in his palm. "We are still doing this," he said. "We're going to that party. We're bringing the booties. We're going to put them on the dessert table just like we planned." She'll just move them, Liam. She'll hide them." "No," he said, a strange, hard smile playing on his lips. "She won't, because I'm not just bringing the booties, I'm bringing the music, I'm bringing the speaker system." I stared at him, confused. "The music? She always asks me to handle the music and the microphone for her toast. And this year," he said, his voice dropping, "I'm going to make sure everyone hears the truth." I didn't understand his plan. It felt vague and I was terrified. But as I looked at my husband, I saw the man I'd married, the quiet, steady, thoughtful man, and I realized his calm wasn't weakness. It was a foundation, and it was starting to crack. Okay, I whispered. Okay, Liam, we'll do it your way. He nodded. Good, now delete those texts, don't reply, don't engage. Let them all believe her. Let them all walk into that party armed with her lies. It'll just make the truth that much louder. The day of the solstice party arrived under a brutally sunny sky. Maple Creek was in full bloom, which only made me feel more withered. I spent an hour staring at my closet, my anxiety so thick I could barely breathe. Wear the blue dress, Liam said, coming up behind me. What? But she told me to wear the blue dress. I know, he said, zipping it up. The one she doesn't like, the one she says washes you out. Wear it, look beautiful. He kissed my shoulder. It's time to stop trying to please her, Alara. Let's just be ourselves. So I wore the blue dress. It was a simple, silk-wrapped dress that, if I was being honest, made me look radiant. My 13-week bump was still tiny, just a slight curve to my stomach that could have been mistaken for a big lunch. But I knew it was there. We walked the 3 blocks to Margot's house. As we approached, the sound of polite chatter and clinking glasses grew louder. Her garden was, of course, perfect. Roses and peonies exploded in curated, landscape-designed perfection. At least 50 people were already there, mingling on the flagstone patio. The moment we stepped through the garden gate, the atmosphere shifted, the chatter dipped, and then, the look started. It was exactly as I'd feared, the pity tilt. A sea of women, all in their summer linens, tilting their heads at me with identical, mournful smiles. Brenda, the Garden Award winner and neighborhood gossip, beelined for us. Ilara, you poor, poor thing, she gushed, pulling me into an aggressive hug that smelled of expensive hairspray. She didn't even look at Liam. I just want you to know, we are all in your corner. My cousin's acupuncturist. I wrote the number down for you. He works miracles with, hostile environments. She tapped her own stomach meaningfully. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. Thank you, Brenda, that's very thoughtful. But I'm fine. Oh, of course you are, dear. Brave face, she whispered, patting my arm. Brave face. And then Margot descended. She was wearing a flowing, cream-colored linen dress, looking every bit the gracious, ethereal matriarch. She kissed Liam's cheek, then wrapped me in a cold, papery hug. Ilara, darling, you came, she whispered, loud enough for Brenda and Aunt Sue to hear. I'm so glad. It's so good for you to get out, see. Everyone is just so supportive of your struggle. We're all one big family here. She was beaming. She was thriving on this. She had cast herself as the loving, supportive mother-in-law, and me as the tragic, barren DIL. I looked for Liam, but he was already busy. He was being helpful. He was setting up the speaker system by the patio steps. He was getting his mother a glass of her favorite Chardonnay. He was laughing at a joke Uncle Mark was telling. A cold dread washed over me. Was he backing out? Was he losing his nerve? He wasn't even looking at me. He was just playing the part of the good son. I felt utterly alone. For the next hour, I was passed from one pitying conversation to another. I was given unsolicited advice on IVF, adoption, and herbal teas. Every "I'm actually pregnant" I tried to utter was met with a sad smile and a "that's the spirit, dear." Positive visualization is so important. They didn't believe me. Margot's update had been so skillfully crafted that any attempt I made to state the simple truth was interpreted as brave denial. Finally, the time came. Margot, glass in hand, walked to the patio steps and tapped the microphone Liam had set up. Ting, ting, ting. Friends, neighbors, family, she began, her voice amplified, coating the entire garden in honey. Welcome, welcome to my home. On this beautiful, beautiful summer day, it just fills my heart to see you all. As we mark the beginning of another season, I want to toast to what's truly important. To health. She smiled, raising her glass toward Aunt Sue. To success, she nodded at Cousin Tim. And to community, she beamed at Brenda. To all of us for being there for each other in good times, and in times of struggle. Her eyes found mine. That pitying, condescending smile was plastered on her face. This was it. This was her victory. And finally, a special toast, she continued. To my son Liam and his lovely wife Alara, we are all of us, sending them our strength and our prayers on their journey. She was about to raise her glass. The crowd was about to drink to my journey. Thank you, Mom. Liam's voice, amplified by the speaker, cut through the air. He had stepped up beside her, taking the second microphone from the stand. Margaret froze, her smile flickered. Liam, darling, what are you? That was beautiful, Mom. Really, he said, his voice smooth and clear. But you missed the biggest piece of good news. The garden went quiet. Liam, sweetheart, we discussed this, Margaret hissed, trying to smile for the crowd, her voice low but audible near the speaker. It's delicate? No, Mom, Liam said, his voice booming, clear as a bell. It's not delicate, it's joyful. Alara and I, we don't need crossed fingers. We don't need prayers. We don't need strength for our journey. We just need a bigger car. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. What he means is, Liam continued, turning to me and holding out his hand, Alara and I are 13 weeks pregnant. We've had the scans. We've heard the heartbeat. We are having a healthy, happy baby, due in February. He pulled me to his side, his arm wrapping around my waist, his other hand coming to rest, deliberately, on my stomach. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Brenda's jaw literally dropped. Liam, Margaret shrieked, her mask of composure shattering. Stop it, you're making a scene, this is not the place, you're upsetting everyone. No, Mom, Liam said, his voice turning to ice. You're the one who's upsetting everyone. You see, I need to clear something up. My mother sent an email, two, actually, where she mentioned a scare and infertility. She was referencing a private, painful miscarriage Alara and I experienced last year. A secret we shared with her, and only her, in confidence. The silence in the garden was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the hum of the neighbor's air conditioner 2 houses down. She knew we had a healthy pregnancy. Liam's voice rang out merciless. She knew we had passed the 12-week mark. She knew we were healthy. But she chose to tell over 100 people that we were struggling. She chose to turn our joy into gossip. She chose to paint my wife as fragile and hostile. He looked right at Brenda, who turned betrayed. How dare you, Margaret finally hissed, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Her public humiliation was complete. How dare you speak to me this way in my home, in front of my friends? And how dare you, Liam shot back, his voice breaking with a pain that was years in the making, try to erase my child. How dare you take my wife's deepest pain and use it as a weapon to control us? Margaret was trembling, her glass shaking so hard that Chardonnay sloshed over the rim. She looked around, desperate, searching for an ally. She found none. Every face, Brenda's, Aunt Sue's, Uncle Mark's, was staring at her with a mixture of shock and disgust. The breaking point had arrived, and it wasn't me who had broken, it was her. You. You are ungrateful, Liam, Margaret spat, trying one last-ditch effort to regain control. I was concerned, I was protecting you, after what she went through, I was being a mother. No, Liam said, his voice dangerously calm. You were being a bully. I looked at my husband and a sudden, confusing thought hit me. His calm, his plan to bring the speakers, his lack of surprise when the second email came out. Liam, I whispered, grabbing his arm. You knew. You knew she would do this, didn't you? He looked at me, his eyes full of a sadness that broke my heart. Yes, he said, his voice just for me. I knew, the crowd murmured. Margaret seized on it. See, he's delusional. He's plotted this. Liam turned back to the microphone. I'm not delusional, Mom, I'm just, finally, paying attention. He turned to me and then to the crowd. My wife is confused and she deserves the truth. Everyone does. When we told my mother our news, I saw the look in her eyes. It wasn't joy, it was the look she gets when she loses a listing. It was possessiveness, it was anger. Liam, stop, Margaret pleaded, her voice cracking. I knew she'd try to control it, he continued, his voice resonating. I knew she'd use the Evite, I'd hoped, I'd prayed, that I was wrong. That's why I went to see her after the first email. I gave her a chance, I begged her. Just be happy for us, Mom, just be a grandmother. He paused, swallowing hard. She cried, she promised. She said it was a misunderstanding, she said she'd fix it. And I almost believed her, but a part of me that has been watching her undermine Alara for years, knew better. So, I said a test, he said, his voice dropping. I stared at him. A test? When I left her house. I knew she was lying. I knew the update would be worse. I knew she'd double down, so I called Aunt Sue. Aunt Sue, standing by the bird bath, gasped and put her hand to her chest. I called Aunt Sue, Liam said, looking at her with apology, and I said, Aunt Sue, Mom is having a hard time with our news. She might call you, please just, whatever she says, humor her, and, if you're comfortable, could you record the call? Aunt Sue looked horrified. Liam, I couldn't, but she did call and she left a voicemail. Oh dear, she left a voicemail, didn't she? Liam asked gently. Aunt Sue fumbled for her phone. I didn't know what to do, oh Margaret, she said. It's okay, Aunt Sue, Liam said. I know what she said. But I think everyone else should hear it. Aunt Sue, her hands trembling, found the voicemail and turned up the volume. In the dead silent garden, Margaret's voice, not her public, syrupy voice, but her cold, conspiratorial one, filled the air. Yes, Sue, it's just awful, the poor girl, she's just so fragile. I'm worried the stress of trying is too much. Liam deserves a family, a real family, and I just don't know if she can give him one. It's probably for the best if this one doesn't. You know, stick, it would be a blessing, really. But for now, we all have to just pray for her struggle. The garden erupted in horrified whispers. My God, someone said. A blessing, Margaret was ashen. She looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Sue, you saved that. But Liam wasn't done. And then, Liam said, his voice like a surgeon's scalpel, there was Brenda. Brenda looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her. I didn't call Brenda. I didn't have to. I knew exactly who Mom's #1 gossip was. So I just checked. My mother and I, we still share a cloud account. She never figured out how to separate them after Dad died. She texts from her iPad, which is linked to my phone. Liam, no, Margaret whispered, her eyes wide with terror. I haven't looked in years, Liam said. I respected her privacy, until she violated ours. Until she violated my wife and our child. He pulled out his own phone. He didn't play a recording, he just read the text message. To Brenda, sent 7:31 a.m. this morning. Right after she promised me she'd fix it. He cleared his throat. Brenda, darling, be a dear and rally the troops for Alara at the party. She's terribly sensitive about her infertility. We have to be so careful. She's convinced she's pregnant, but we all know the truth. It's just phantom. She's hysterical. Just pat her arm and tell her she's brave. She's desperate for the attention. He lowered the phone. The twist wasn't just that Margaret was a monster. The twist was that my quiet, reserved, gentle husband had seen it all. He hadn't been a passive, mommy's boy husband. He had been a strategic general, gathering evidence, and waiting for her to publicly build her own gallows. He hadn't been defending his mother for the last 2 days. He'd been giving her just enough rope. The silence was broken by Brenda. You told me she was hysterical, she screamed at Margaret. You told me she was a charity case, you used me. Margaret stammered, she had nothing. No lies, no manipulations, no tears, she was just exposed. The matriarch was naked. My husband, my quiet, gentle Liam, had just detonated a truth bomb in the middle of her perfect garden, and all she could do was stand in the wreckage. She tried to erase our baby, I whispered, the full weight of his plan landing on me. Yes, Liam said, his voice finally breaking with the sheer, agonizing weight of it. She did, and I couldn't let her. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the plan, Alara. I couldn't, I knew you. You have such a good heart. You would have tried to stop it. You would have tried to make peace. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a war, and she was the only one fighting. Until today. The social execution was complete. The resolution was swift and brutal. Margaret stood frozen on the steps, the voicemails and text messages hanging in the air, heavier than the humidity. Her face, which had cycled through rage and terror, was now just blank. She was a queen deposed, staring at the subjects who were no longer her subjects. Margaret, a blessing, Aunt Sue whispered, her voice trembling with disgust. You wished that on them. And hysterical, Brenda spat, crossing her arms. Of all the, I am not your pawn, Margaret, to think. I almost gave her that acupuncturist's number. The crowd didn't move. They just stared. This was the woman who judged their lawns, their pasta salads, their children's colleges. This was the woman who held the social fabric of Maple Creek in her iron grip. And she was a fraud. A cruel, manipulative, bitter woman. Margot's eyes darted around, looking for a single sympathetic face. She found none. Liam, his point made, his evidence presented, let the silence do the work. He didn't need to say another word. He had simply held up a mirror, and the entire neighborhood was finally seeing the monster that lived in it. He put down the microphone. He walked over to the dessert table where Margot's perfect, four-tiered lemon cake sat. He picked up the small, discreet box we had brought, the one I thought had been forgotten. He walked back to me, opened it, and took out the tiny, hand-knitted white booties. He turned back to the crowd, his voice now quiet, no microphone needed. But it carried. Oh, it carried. My wife and I, he said, have been waiting 2 years for this. We are so, so happy, and we are so excited to finally, officially, share our joy with you. He held up the booties. My friend Elena, who I hadn't even seen, who must have been standing in the back, let out a whoop. Yes, to Elara and Liam, she shouted. It was like a spell breaking. Suddenly the pity was gone. The whispers were gone. The crowd surged forward, but this time it wasn't with mournful looks. It was with genuine, unadulterated joy. Oh my goodness, a baby. A neighbor I barely knew squealed, grabbing my arm. Congratulations. February. A winter baby, how wonderful. Elara, you're glowing, you're not washed out at all, that blue is your color. Aunt Sue pushed through, her eyes filled with tears. She hugged me tight. I am so sorry, child, I should have known, she. Oh, I'm just so happy for you, so happy. Brenda came over, her face still red but her eyes sincere. Well, that was something but a baby, that's the real news. Congratulations, Elara, and you, she looked at Liam with newfound respect. Well done. The power shift was absolute. The party was no longer Margot's. It was ours. It was a baby shower. It was a celebration of new life and of a truth finally spoken. People were laughing, toasting us, touching my arm with genuine affection, asking me if I was tired, if I needed a chair, if I wanted a non-alcoholic spritzer. In trying to erase our baby, Margot had only made it the singular focus of the entire event. In trying to paint me as a fragile maybe, she had inadvertently revealed me as a triumphant survivor. I looked over the laughing, cheering crowd for Margot. She was gone. She hadn't stormed off. She hadn't made a scene. She had simply vanished. While everyone was surging forward to congratulate us, she had slipped back into her perfect, cream-colored house. Defeated. Alone. The party continued for another hour, louder and happier than it had any right to be. Liam's hand never left my back. He was my anchor, my guardian. Finally, as the sun began to dip, we said our goodbyes. We walked home, hand in hand, the little white booties clutched in my fist. We didn't talk. We just walked, the sound of the summer crickets starting up around us. When we got to our drafty fixer-upper, we walked into the empty nursery. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light across the floor. I turned to Liam. And I finally cried, but they weren't tears of sadness or anger. They were tears of release. I'm sorry, he whispered, pulling me close. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the whole plan. I couldn't risk you trying to make peace. I knew. I knew this was the only way. I had to let her show everyone exactly who she is. I looked up at him, at this quiet, thoughtful man who had just waged and won a silent, devastating war on my behalf. On our family's behalf. You protected us, I whispered, my hand on my stomach. You protected our baby. I will always protect our baby, he said, his voice thick. And I will always protect you. She is my mother, but you too are my life. He kissed me, and for the first time in days I felt nothing but peace. The dragon had been faced. The narrative had been reclaimed. Our baby was no longer an erased secret or a whispered maybe. Our baby was, finally, just real. The fallout in Maple Creek was immediate. Margot's social reign wasn't just over, it was annihilated. The summer solstice party, which had been her crown jewel, was now the party where Liam Miller exposed his mother. The gossip mill, which Margot had fed for years, turned on her with a vengeance. Brenda, furious at being used, made sure everyone knew the details of the hysterical text. Aunt Sue, racked with guilt, told her side of the story to anyone who would listen, painting Margot as a cold, calculating puppet master. No one dropped by Margot's for coffee. Her name was quietly removed from the garden committee's email chain. When she was seen at the grocery store, people didn't give her pitying looks. They just gave her a wide berth, as if her cruelty were contagious. She had become a pariah in the very neighborhood she'd ruled. Our life, by contrast, became blessedly normal, and then wonderfully full. The pity texts were replaced by genuine offers of help. Elena threw me a baby shower that was so full of joy and laughter it felt like a healing ritual. Brenda, in a stunning reversal, organized a neighborhood meal train for our first 2 weeks postpartum. Even Aunt Sue, who had always been a bit distant, sent us a box of hand-knitted blankets in every color. Liam handled all communication with his mother. It was minimal. He had gone to her house the day after the party. He told me he'd found her sitting in the dark in her perfect living room. He didn't yell, he just laid out the terms. "You will not see Alara," he'd told her, "and you will not be a part of this baby's life until you get help. You need therapy, Mom. You're grieving Dad, you're angry, and you're cruel, and I won't have that cruelty near my wife or my child." He told me she had said nothing, not a word. For months, there was only silence. We went to our checkups. We heard the heartbeat, strong and steady. We saw our baby on the 20-week ultrasound, a girl. We painted the nursery a soft, sunny yellow. We built the crib. We lived our lives. Then, one afternoon in late December, about a month before my due date, a package arrived. It was a large, flat box. No return address, but I recognized the looping, perfect magnolia script. "Liam," I called out. He came and stood by me as I opened it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was the most beautiful, intricate, handmade baby quilt I had ever seen. It was covered in tiny, embroidered woodland creatures. And in the corner, a small, stitched square for my granddaughter. At the bottom of the box was a simple, cream-colored card. It wasn't a long, rambling, gaslighting letter. It was just 3 words, "I am sorry." I looked at Liam. He was staring at the quilt, his expression unreadable. "What does this mean?" I whispered. "It means," he said, letting out a long breath. "It means it's a start." We did see her. 2 weeks after our daughter Clara, meaning bright and clear, was born, we met on neutral ground at a park. Margaret looked smaller, older. The polished, terrifying matriarch was gone. In her place was just a woman holding a small, gift-wrapped box. She didn't try to hug me. She didn't make excuses. She just looked at Clara, sleeping in my arms, and her eyes filled with genuine, unscripted tears. "She's beautiful, Alara," she whispered. "She's perfect, and I am so deeply sorry for what I did. I was wrong, I was lost." It wasn't a fix, it wasn't absolution, but it was a beginning. The boundary was and would always be firm. Liam and I were the heads of our own family now. Margaret could be a part of it, but she would never, ever control it again. Tonight, I'm sitting in the yellow nursery, rocking Clara. She's 3 months old, and her tiny hand is wrapped around my finger. I look at the woodland quilt, which is draped over the back of the rocking chair. I think about that awful day, that Evite, that feeling of being erased. Margaret had tried to build a narrative of maybe and if and struggle. She had tried to turn my joy into a secret, a source of shame, a delicate condition to be managed. But the truth of a heartbeat on a monitor, the truth of a kick felt from the inside, the truth of a healthy baby crying in her father's arms, that truth was always there. It was a fact, as real and solid as the ground beneath our feet. Margaret had tried to smother our future with whispers, but she never understood. You can't erase a life that's already begun. You can't bury a joy that is determined to grow. She built her world on a foundation of gossip, but a lie, no matter how carefully constructed, will always crumble. Because the truth, in the end, always grows louder.